All right. Thank you very much indeed. I see a full house over here, and that's fantastic to see so many people out here. We hope we have a pretty fun, educational, entertaining agenda for all of you. But I just want to start by really thanking all of you to be here. This is a very important subject. The whole area of education is especially important both in America and in India. And on behalf of Pan IIT USA, I want to welcome not only all the attendees, but all of the speakers who've flown in, many from the UK, many from India, and elsewhere. A few words about the event today, so you have sort of perspective about it. We're doing this in conjunction with Pratham. Pratham is India's leading NGO, with its sole mission being to help improve the quality of primary education, primary and secondary education in India. The organization's been around since 1994, and over the last 20 years, they've done an enormous amount to help leverage the efforts of government, but through non-governmental organizational methods, through programs on the ground, volunteers on the ground, et cetera. And the goal today is really to be able to help engage in a conversation with Silicon Valley and with technologists in Silicon Valley about how we can do the next 20 years of improving education in India, but this time with more technology involved. Of course, you know, we have an excellent cast of speakers. You'll probably get a sense today from the people today at a very high level of the kind of problems that need to be solved in India, how they might be solved at a big picture level, perhaps addressing technologies to help kids learn on their own as much as possible, and then very specific examples that will come from companies that are actually doing real work, real products on the ground, both for India and for America, led by some extraordinarily compassionate yet very hard-headed business guys, technologists who know how to run a business and build products for this particular marketplace. I want to, at this point, thank everybody who's been involved in this particular seminar. There have been a lot of people at Pan IIT who have been involved, all the volunteers. I want to start by thanking Monishi Sanyal, whom you just saw, who really has been the guy who's helped to make this particular seminar possible. And along with Manishi, Srikant Chari of Pan IIT, who's headed up pretty much all of the activities in getting volunteers involved. Of course, all the other volunteers, Sudarshan, many others who have all been involved, both from Pratham and from Pan IIT itself. And lastly, I want to thank NetApps for making this wonderful venue available to us to be able to do all of this. At this point, I'd like to kick off the seminar by inviting our keynote speaker, Dr. Sugata Mitra, who will speak. I'll let him decide, give you the talk. But I've seen his talks. If many of you have actually seen him on TED, you'll realize he's a very, very dynamic speaker. And the subject, he makes it so very interesting. Dr. Mitra is Professor of Educational Technology at the School of Education, Communication, and Language Sciences at Newcastle University in the UK. He has the distinction of being awarded the $1 million TED Prize in 2013. And when you see his talk today, you'll see why that's the case. He's credited with more than 25 inventions in the area of cognitive science and educational technology, and he was the scholar who coined the term minimally invasive education. He was also the instigator of the nonprofit called Hole in the Wall. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sugata Mitra. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I expect that there are many people here from IITs, which makes me a bit nervous actually, because I am sort of a fake IIT product. I joined IIT Delhi for my master's in physics and went on to do a PhD in physics at the IIT in Delhi. I used to be called FPG, which was short for Friend, Philosopher, and Guide, to my engineer friends who actually didn't think I was good for anything. So what I'm going to tell you is how I got out of physics and got into something completely weird, which ended up back inside physics again. And that subject is what in this country is called elementary education. In the rest of the world, it's called primary education. It's all about children. We start with a problem. It's difficult to get good teachers in remote places. What do you mean by remote places? Well, I'll tell you about two very simple experiments. Let me go back a step. In 2007, I took two of my colleagues rented a car, and they drove out of New Delhi, India, away from all the built-up places into rural India. And wherever they saw a primary school, an elementary school, they would stop and give a standard government test for English, math, and science. And they came back to Delhi, added the numbers up, and we plotted it against distance from Delhi. And this is what we got. Now, that was a rather odd graph. Why were the schools getting worse as we went further into rural India? The schools were actually identical. They were government schools with the same amount of funding, so it wasn't anything to do with the quality of the school itself, but something else. The answer lay in a very simple, it was a very simple answer. All we had to do is ask the teachers, would you like to work somewhere else? Near New Delhi, they said, no, we're fine. You know, there's good healthcare here, there's good education, it's a nice big city, no problem. Suburbs of New Delhi, oh, it's even better. You know, they're really good, and you know, we don't have the bustle of Delhi. We love it here. About 50 miles away from Delhi, well, it's quieter here than Delhi, but you know, it's a bit of a drive. It takes an hour to get to Delhi. 100 miles from Delhi, well, I wouldn't mind moving a little bit closer to Delhi. 200 miles from Delhi, anywhere but here. Okay, so the government, I went to the government with this data and said, are you aware of this? And they said, yes, teacher migration is the problem. What happens is that all the teachers try to migrate towards the big metropolitan areas where the standard of living is better. After all, teachers are human beings. Who succeeds? The good ones, leaving the bad ones behind. Hence the curve. In 2006, when I came to Britain, I thought I would not find this problem. Because here's a developed economy, rural places are sometimes even more attractive than the urban ones. There shouldn't be a problem. So I looked at what are called the GCSE results. GCSE is a big exam that children, 17-year-olds, give at the end of school. I guess you would have an equivalent here as well. So anyway, so it's a very, very important exam. So I took the GCSE results and I looked at them for northeastern England, where I lived, and found that there are some really good results and there are some really bad results. What would explain it for a developed economy like Britain? I started looking for a correlation, and I found one quite quickly. If you plot the GCSE results against a number which I need to explain here in America, it's called the density of council housing. Council housing is low-cost housing provided to people with problems. You know, they don't have jobs, or all sorts of problems. Some places have lots of such housing, and some places have little. So there's a number called the density of council housing. And that correlates with the GCSE results and gives you the same curve as in India. So I went to go to these high council housing density areas, and it's very obvious what the problem is. There's graffiti on the wall, there's crime, there's drug problems, there's all kinds of problems. And the teachers would say the same thing. It's not that we love the children, they would say, but it's not safe. It's not safe for myself, it's not safe for my family. If it was possible, I would like to go to a safer place. I then started looking at, I published these results, and I started looking for similar data from other countries. And I found that this problem exists everywhere in the world, including the United States. There are places on the planet where, due to one reason or the other, good teachers either do not or cannot go. We can't change that. So what can we do about it? Is there a leveler? Well, is there anything that could make that poorer quality of teaching a little bit better. I started experimenting way back in 1999, 15 years ago, with this problem, because I used to work for a pretty rich company, and just outside our office was this big sprawling slum. And I used to teach people how to write programs. And I used to think, well, how many of these children am I missing in that slum? I mean, what's the reason why they can't be good programmers? The reason is I can't get a teacher in there. So instead of a teacher, I put in a computer. And discovered that children can teach themselves how to use it without any instruction. Now, that's not a big deal today, but it was a big deal 15 years ago. Because at that time, I think some of you will remember, computers used to be taught. You know, there used to be a teacher like me who would say, this is called a monitor. This is called a mouse. This, okay, do you remember those days? So they said, you know, this is impossible. How can they teach themselves? And these are slum children. They don't know any English. They've never seen a computer before. They cannot conceive of what the internet is. So how can this happen? The experiment was very simple. I'd copied a bank model and made myself a do-it-yourself ATM, put in a computer in there, connected it to high speed, in those days high speed, I think it was 1 megabit per second internet connection, a touchpad on the wall, and you know, it was 3 feet off the ground, so the children came in saying, what is this? And I said, I don't know. Can we do anything with it? I said, yeah, I don't know. You do what you like. And about 8 hours later, my colleagues reported that, you know, there are those slum children out there. You know what's happening? They're browsing. So, and they're teaching each other how to browse. So I got some money at that point from the World Bank because they were very interested. They said, this can't be happening. I said, well, it is. I'm going to measure it if you give me a bit of money. They gave me some. I repeated the experiment in 22 different villages all across the length and breadth of India. Here's a brief glimpse of those years. You'll get the feel of this. On your right is an 8-year-old boy. To his left, a 6-year-old girl, his student. He was teaching her how to browse. Then back in the villages in Rajasthan, children teaching themselves how to record their voices on a sound recorder and play back their music to themselves. And doing all kinds of things like that, downloading games from Disney.com. And very excitedly telling me that we found a game which has a rat in it. And I said, a rat? And that was Mickey Mouse. So we measured. On a computing literacy scale, I'm not going to go into the details of this. On the computing literacy scale, what this graph says is groups of children left unsupervised with an internet connection will, in a period of 9 months, reach the same level of competence as the average office secretary in the West. You can imagine it raised a few questions about the nature of training and its purpose. I published that and I got a lot of response from all over the place, some saying this can't be happening, you've fudged it, but mostly this saying, you know, you've bumped into something which is really very big. I left physics and decided to find out what that very big thing could be. Well, it took many years and many, many experiments to find out what I'm going to show you in the next slide. I've been a teacher all my life, so that's a hard slide for me to write. That's the reality today. Okay, groups of children, every word is important. It has to be groups, it's not individuals. Groups of children clustered around the internet can learn almost anything by themselves if they want to. The whole thing is about wanting to. So I won't go into, you know, it's all published. Mathematics achievement, computing literacy achievements, changing their pronunciation in English, all sorts of things, culminating in an experiment where I tried to do the impossible. The question at that time in England was, aren't you overstating the case? When you say that children can learn anything by themselves? So I said, well, let's test it. I took a village in South India where I had these hole-in-the-wall computers already there, so the children knew how to use them. I put in material on DNA replication and molecular biology in English. So the children came running in there, the Tamil-speaking children. So what's this? Is this a new game? I said, no, it's something very interesting, but it's all in English. And I don't think you'll be able to understand it. But anyway, I'm going away. So, that's a very good pedagogical method with 12-year-olds. So they'll go running for it the moment you do that. So they went running for it. And then 2 months later, I went back, and they looked very glum, and they said, we've understood nothing. So I said, well, I wanted to test for the limit. I found it. What's so surprising anyway? So I asked them, what were you doing all these 2 months? Oh, we were looking at those screens with those big chemistry words and all of that, but we've understood nothing. I said, what exactly were you looking for? So a little girl raised her hand, and I'll remember her words for the rest of my life. In broken Tamil and English, she said, apart from the fact that improper replication of the DNA molecule causes genetic disease, we've understood nothing else. So there you go, the digital divide. The mythical digital divide. I tested them pre and post, 0 to 30%. It's an educational impossibility. In a language they don't know, in that tropical heat, in a subject that's 10 years ahead of their time. What was happening there? My question at that point to myself was, how does this happen? But anyway, 30% is a pretty lousy score. In England, it would be called a failure. How do I get those children 20 more marks? There's a girl that the kids were friendly with, so I asked her, listen, can you help me? Can you teach them some more biotechnology? She was an accountant. She said, absolutely not. I didn't have any science in school. I have no idea what they're doing under that tree all day with those equations and molecular structures and so on. I can't help you. So I said to her, no, you must. Use the method of the grandmother. So she said, what's that? I said, stand behind them. Whenever they do anything, say, wow, that's fantastic. Where did you get that from? What was the page you got it from? Does it lead to something else? When I was your age, I couldn't have done anything like that. I was so stupid. We've all had grandmothers. You remember the method. They don't use the same method as either the parents or the teachers. They use admiration to create a learning spiral. She did that for 2 more months. The scores jumped to 50%, just to show off. Okay, they'd caught up with Delhi. I had a control school in Delhi with a trained biotechnology teacher. When I published this, well, as they say in this country, the shit hit the fan. I hope I got that right. So now I came back to England, and the English school teachers said, what's going on? I mean, what is this? So I said, well, let's try a couple of things. So one of the teachers said to me, let's try the hole in the wall. I said, are you out of your mind? Try the hole in the wall in northeastern England, you'll get frozen children. You can't put anything outside in England. So she said, then are we never going to be able to do this? So I said, no, we can. Let's turn the hole in the wall upside down or inside out, which is what we did. And we created what's called a self-organized learning environment. How does it work? It's very simple. You take a classroom full of children, let's say about 24 of them, tell them to shut down all computers except for maybe 5, so that you get 1:4. Why 1:4? That's the number, that's the average number at the hole in the wall. 4 children clustered around a computer. So you put those computers in the classroom. You don't tell the children anything. You just ask them a question. You ask them a question like, let's see what's a good question. You could ask them a question like, why is it that we have, one that 9-year-olds love very, very much. Why is it that we have, when we are children, we have hair on our heads, and when we get a little bit older, we no longer have hair on our heads, but we have it growing out of our ears? Okay? It's a very deep answer, by the way. It's about cell expression. And they'll get to it in about 25 minutes, and they're thrilled to get to it. So you convert curriculum into a big question, a question that will engage children, and just leave them to it. So then they'll ask, why can't we all have computers? So I said, well, you can't. I mean, you can only have 5. So that makes them talk to each other and change groups and go running around. In other words, in the language of physics, you create a chaotic situation. And we know that when you create a chaotic situation under the right parameters, it will self-organize and produce patterns. And that's what I figured we were seeing at these hole-in-the-wall locations, which is why it was looking so odd. Well, we know that this method, self-organized learning, will get you to 30%. We know that from Kalikuppam. How do you get the extra 20? I need a grandmother. I put out a call in the British newspaper, The Guardian, saying, if you are a British grandmother, if you have broadband and a web camera, can you give me 1 hour of your time per week for free? In 2 weeks, I got 200. There are now about 600 of them. I know more British grandmothers than anyone in the universe. So, they're not all grandmothers. They're also young men and women and so on. It's just people interested in children. And they form what's called the granny cloud. The granny cloud sits up there on the internet, and you can beam them to those places where good teachers don't want to go, or to any other place. That's what it would more or less look like. You need a life-size image, not a little talking head on a tiny screen. A big life-size image, good audio system, and Skype or something similar. I have an example, but we probably won't have audio, so I'm not going to play that one. Well, I'll play a little bit of it, because even without the audio, you can get the look and feel of what happens in those sessions. There is never a problem with engagement under these circumstances. You know, it's not about the technology. It's about the granny and the children. So I published that, and we got more grannies. And that's about all that I know till now. You can create a self-organized learning environment, convert the curriculum into a question, get in a nice granny, and learning just happens. We call it minimally invasive education. Increasingly, people are calling it learning at the edge of chaos. But there are some things we don't know yet. We don't know if children can learn to read by themselves. Learning to read is very important, but we don't know if they can do that. I'm doing a set of experiments in Pune in India, trying to find out if they can. And once again, there's a video, but not enough time to play you that one. I did a set of measurements in Uruguay, where children have been with computer, every child with a computer, for the last 5 or 6 years. And it's quite easy to show that the children read better than their counterparts in the UK or the USA in their home language, Spanish. Is that because of the computers? It's hard to tell. But I cannot think of, I can't say that the computers don't have a role to play in that. A child who's looking continuously at internet web pages learns to read better. It's kind of obvious, actually, because the internet doesn't know that they're children. So the internet throws everything it has at them. 9-year-olds start quoting from the Harvard Business Review effortlessly. You know, it's just that we don't show it to them, so we never gave them a chance to look at that kind of thing. So we know that children, we don't know if they can search accurately, but they never get the answers wrong, so collectively they are searching accurately. How? I don't know that yet. We know that children can do all these absurd things, and that they're doing it at younger and younger and younger ages. I used to think it works between 6 and 14, 15 years. I've changed that. I've taken the lower one down now to 2.5, because there are 2.5s, and I can see people nodding here. You give them an iPad and watch them do things as though they can read. What that is called, it's not called reading, it's something else. We don't understand it. We will. So what do we need to do? We need to include the internet into the curriculum. We have an education system which tries to pretend that the internet does not exist. Well, that's kind of stupid, isn't it? When you look at the curriculum of any country, you'll find that it's trying to pretend that it's an internet-free world that your child is going to grow up in. So we need to include the internet. Pedagogy needs to include the internet. The use of the internet inside the classroom, inside the examination hall. This is how we solve problems these days. I think you'll agree. Okay. This is how we solve problems. Doesn't it remind you of the hole in the wall 14 years ago? Why are we not teaching the children to solve problems like that, clustered around a computer? That's the first thing they'll be asked to do when they go for their jobs, their first jobs. Instead, we ask them to solve problems like this, in rows without a single assistive technology, using paper and pencil. For what reason? Because that's the way it was 300 years ago. So we need to focus on the internet and collaboration for problem solving and decision making. That's the skill that you need for today's people. It wasn't needed before. So the existing system, it's not broken. It's perfectly constructed for this. Okay? It was meant for that world, for this. Look at that picture. That's the office of 1920. Clerks, a floor supervisor, reading, writing, and arithmetic being the three key skills that you need. And that's what we are continuously asking our children to do. Look at that. Do you see what we are producing our children for? What these schools are producing? They're producing people for employers who are unfortunately dead. So we need to take the obsolescence, we need to take obsolescence seriously. You know, there are a whole lot of things going obsolete. We don't like things going obsolete because we miss them. But we have to accept it. What's gone obsolete? The fountain pen, it's obsolete. The wristwatch, it's obsolete. Telling the time from two hands, it's obsolete. Okay, I can see you getting a little serious now. Let's test you a little bit further. Handwriting. Are you preparing your 6-year-old for his life 20 years from now by teaching him good handwriting? Handwriting should be a hobby like knitting. Multiplication tables. You know, people tell me, oh, one day the batteries will run out and all the gadgets will be gone, and then you'll be back in the jungle trying to save your life with the 17 times tables. You know that's not going to happen. If the teacher is a friend, if the internet is available, if children are allowed to cluster around, if they don't have too many rules, if you can make the system chaotic, then curriculum, pedagogy, and examinations can be rolled into one to create an entirely new form of schooling. What I'm doing now is, last year I got a bit of money from TED. So I decided that I would do an experiment to see how far this new all-in-one method can go. I'm going to build 7 facilities, of which 5 will be in India, ranging from the really, really remote to urban middle-class India, and 2 in England, in urban middle-class England. And I'm going to try to see if the same facility can even out the playing field. And if it cannot, then why not? 5 of them are already built. The most remotest of the lot is in the Sundarbans, the Ganges Delta, where the Ganges meets the sea, where there is no electricity, there's no healthcare to speak of, there are no schools. So it's not an area where you say, how can I improve schooling, because there isn't a school anyway. Okay? There wasn't. Now there is one. It looks like this. And it doesn't have a teacher. It's solar powered, and it has access to 600 teachers around the world at the point in time when a child needs them, if they ever do. I told you that in the hole in the wall, from the blank screen to playing the first game, the children took about 8 hours. I measured this in this village called Korakati now. That number shrunk amazingly. These children have also never seen a computer. Well, they've seen a computer. They've seen computers on TV, but they've never actually seen one in real life. So I was there with a stopwatch just about 10 days ago when we opened it to see how long would they take. From the blank screen to the first downloaded game, 7 minutes. Here's the one in England. It's in a place called Killingworth. It's heavily used. And well, I have a group of children who manage the whole show there. The last time I met them, they said, I won't name the subject, Mrs. So-and-so of subject X, you know Sugata, she was in the school in the clouds and she was teaching. Will you tell her not to do that, or shall we? Okay, so I have to go back and give them an answer. This is, that's New Delhi, Kalkaji, India. It's a government school for girls. That's Newton Aycliffe in County Durham, northeastern England. They have a beautiful school in the cloud. It's made with astroturf and things like that. It looks like a park. That's another view. And Chandrakona in West Bengal again, a place where you still have, I mean, it looks like the Stone Age if you go into the fields of Chandrakona. But in the middle of that is this. It works just fine so far. And if you look at those faces, I think it tells you the story anyway. Thank you.